Over the years, I've grown very fond of the games made by Platinum Games. Titles like Bayonetta, Nier Automata, and even that one Legend of Korra game. Do you guys remember that one? Surprisingly, it wasn't that bad for a licensed game, but I digress. As someone who loves hack and slash games with lots of style and a unique identity, I think Platinum has the market cornered for some decent quality stuff. For example, the Bayonetta series has taken off with a third game already released. Also, subscribe for a video on that, by the way, because it is coming soon. Not to mention how the Nier series has been dominating the world of gaming as well. It's even getting an anime next year, and we all know that only the best games get anime adaptations, am I right? Anyways, sadly, not everything can be sunshine when it comes to the world of video game development. Recently, it's been pretty disappointing to see the controversies that have been surrounding Platinum Games. As someone who calls himself a fan of their games, I have to be real about the negative things when they crop up. And if the Bayonetta 3 controversy wasn't confirmed to be totally fake, I would have definitely called them out for that in my upcoming video. But despite all those things, it's pretty clear that Platinum is becoming more of a gaming powerhouse, while also losing its focus on some of its more recent projects. Like, for example, today's game. Babylon's Fall is yet another game created by both Platinum and Square Enix that many thought would be a masterpiece. After the massive success of the Nier series, how could things possibly go wrong for this dynamic duo? Well, to put it simply, the answer is greed. Babylon's Fall could have been another amazing game from these companies, but it's very clear that the quality was the last thing that was considered during development. Like, let's start off with the very first thing that you'll notice when booting up the game. The graphics are just horrible. This looks like an early PS3 game at best. Everything from the cutscenes, the menus, the character models, and even the way the game runs is terrible. I don't know if they dusted off an old engine to try and get this up and running, but you can tell that your money was wasted before you even get to do anything in the game. It honestly turned me off from wanting to keep playing it because I could feel how lazy the devs were for designing this. Platinum is usually good with capturing a certain aesthetic that helps make up for the lower quality visuals in games like Astral Chain or Mad World. Even when the hardware that they're working on is prehistoric, they tend to make the best of it and compensate wherever they can. And I want to say that the same could be true about Babylon's Fall since the style is closer to looking like an oil painting, but everything just ends up looking like it has way too much motion blur. Maybe it would have been smarter to aim for something more of a cell shading approach to give it a different look, but with all the blurriness, it takes away from the aesthetic they were aiming for. Plus, it damn sure didn't do much to hide those low quality character models. But hey, that's just about how the game looks. Let's talk more about how the game plays. If you played any of the games from Platinum, you have a pretty good idea of how this would play. Combat is focused on getting good rankings, doing combos, and beating your enemies as efficiently or quickly as you can. And things aren't too much different in this game, with the combat being more similar to Nier Automata. And that's with the variety of weapons you can equip at the same time to defeat your enemies. Everything from swords, axes, bows, staffs, and shields, you can equip to both your arms as well as the Gideon coffin on your back. The Gideon coffin serves as your extra abilities, allowing you to not only wield 4 weapons at once, but also complete some of the minor platforming sections in the levels. Now, I can't say that the combat here is bad, but it is very uninspired when you compare it to other games. Like, there's not much variety in the combos you can pull off, and a lot of battles end up feeling like I'm mashing all 4 attack buttons until my enemy dies. There's no skill tree to unlock more advanced techniques, nor does it feel like your equipment even makes a major difference either. Like, sure, you can dress yourself up to be dripped out, but even the abilities on your weapons and armor don't seem to make a huge impact. Now, normally in games like this, you'd pay attention to the key details of your stats, but this game makes it so your power level is the most important factor in battle. Not even the rarity of your gear will matter a lot of the time. I've gone into fights with my gear on the highest rarity and still got destroyed because the power level wasn't high enough. Meanwhile, I'll go into the same missions with some common gear with a high enough power level and it will be a cakewalk. Which kind of defeats the purpose of a looter game like this. I don't know, I can at least say that the more powerful gear did the job, but I couldn't imagine trying to grind for the highest rarity on top of also hunting for the highest power level for the same weapons. And trust me, with the timer still ticking on this game's death, I sure as hell won't waste my time even trying. There's also a crafting system here so you can farm materials from enemies and older gear that you're not using anymore. And for a looting system like this, it makes sense to have crafting too. Not only are you clearing your inventory of items that do nothing but waste space, but you can use the materials to make whatever armor or weapons that could help you out in missions, both with stronger levels as well as elements and special abilities to create a better build. However, what was really confusing at first is how the crafting feature wasn't added into the game until halfway through the campaign. A key feature that could have made the game much more interesting early on was nothing but an afterthought for the story. The reason for this is probably because the campaign wasn't made to be the only part of the experience, as you can clearly tell from the battle pass being so prominent, but we'll get deeper into that part a little bit later. Another feature that should have come much sooner was upgrades to your Gideon coffin that add a lifesteal ability. A whole lifesteal. Something that changes the combat tremendously, yet doesn't get added until the last few hours of the campaign. If anything, this is the only real thing that makes the gameplay start to have a flow. Killing enemies and chaining together those kills with your lifesteal does feel satisfying, but still, it was added in way too late in the game. Not to mention there's also other upgrades to your Gideon coffin too, like being able to slot in crystals for stat boosts. I wasn't able to do too much with this since I'm pretty sure you need to grind out more levels to unlock more crystals, but like I said before,
ain't nobody got time for that.
It's more than obvious how much they intended for people to grind and get as much loot as possible. But what's crazy to me is how they expected people to play this in groups of 4 as if it's a team doing Destiny raids. But because literally 10 people own this game, I had to play through the entirety of it solo. And hey, it wasn't horrible, I'll admit it, but the worst thing has to be the artificial grind. There were about 3 parts of the game where I got stuck and I had to go back and grind for better gear. Because without that gear, the enemies would take out half my health bar with one hit. Speaking of which, I gotta be upfront with y'all for a second and say that I did not end up finishing this game.
Boo!
I know, it's such a major shock, but my reasoning for that is because the final boss is just terrible. Throughout this entire game, I played it totally solo. I did have some issues along the way, but the final boss was the first time where I really felt like this had to be done with more people. Every time I fought this thing, it would take 20 minutes just to get its health bar down by a quarter. And even then, I ran out of potions, I ran out of revives, I literally had no option but to die. And all the while, I looked online trying to see if maybe I had the wrong build or the wrong weapon. And of course, the best weapon that I saw to use was a bow and arrow. But in every video I saw of people beating this boss, there were always groups of at least 2 or 4 people. And hey, maybe I can be a hardcore gamer and put in the work and put in the hours and I could take this thing down by myself no problem. Except the problem is that I'm just done with this whole game. Sure, I'll never get that trophy for finishing the game, but the amount of crap I have to deal with just to play this is dreadful. It didn't really help that every step along the way I kept thinking to myself,
this game is going to be nothing but dust in 4 months.
Which of course leads me into the final part of this video. The absolute worst thing about Babylon's Fall is the way they chose to monetize this game. Mind you, this was released as a full price game. You had to pay $60 to get this game brand new and they still expected you to drop even more money for a battle pass. The issue here is that so much of the game seems to revolve around the loop of doing missions, playing online, collecting loot, and rinsing and repeating that same formula. It's something that works pretty well for games like Destiny, but not really that much here. It's just not something that Platinum isn't used to doing in their games, and obviously this is not their forte. If you want to implement systems like what Destiny 2 has, you have to first make sure that the game is good enough to stand on its own. And that's without relying on people coming back regularly to spend money. The thing is, as a single player game, it's not that horrible. But the schemes that they're using to try and get more money out of people is what makes this game horrible. And yeah, I can look at a game like Overwatch 2 and complain all day about their battle pass and their horrible microtransactions. But at the very least, I can say that that game is free to play. So yeah, if you don't want to spend $20 on a skin, or you don't want to buy the battle pass for $10 that gives you stuff that you might not want, at the very least you could play the game for free, and that's just it. You can earn stuff for free, you can play the game for free, and that's it. But Babylon's Fall, however, was sold as a AAA game and monetized like a free-to-play game. And this battle pass doesn't even offer much value outside of cosmetics, in-game currency, and even more loot drops. And these things do not fit the game well because the feedback loop here is abysmal. It does look like they plan to have more content later in the future on some kind of roadmap, but what we have right now is pretty lame. There's so many of these levels that I would never think to go back and play repeatedly, even with a group of friends. So asking me to come back so I can do daily or weekly quests to level up the battle pass sounds more like you're asking to take a dump on my chest. With games like Genshin Impact, Fortnite, and Overwatch 2 already eating away at my time, you gotta come up with something a lot more interesting than this to keep me coming back. And you know what, I almost did buy into the battle pass just for this video so I can give some detailed thoughts. But shortly after the game was announced to be shut down, it looks like you can't even buy the currency that you need to buy the battle pass. So at least I can thank them for saving me that $10. But yeah, if you didn't know so already, it was announced that Babylon's Fall will be shutting down its servers in February of 2023. Which is insane because by that point, the game wouldn't have even been out for a full year. This is the obvious result of a game that was released with the intention of being a live service, meaning that its only intention was to be a cash grab and nothing more. What was interesting about the game as I played it was that I didn't feel like it needed to be the kind of game it was. Square Enix did not need to make it so you have to log into their servers to play the game. They didn't need to have a battle pass, and they damn sure didn't need this to be a game for people to play online similar to Destiny. Platinum is so good at creating these small games that you can finish in about 12 hours. And if you threw away all the extra monetization stuff in this game, that's what Babylon's Fall would have been. Granted, it wouldn't have been the best title made by them, but it did stand up as being something worth trying out as a single player game. And that's honestly what really sucks, because as soon as the servers do shut down, there won't even be a single player experience left. Because for whatever strange reason, all of your progress is tied directly into the Square Enix servers, so you can't even boot up the game to do anything single player. This game will be nothing but an empty disk and a file taking up space on your console for no reason. And honestly, that's the sad reality of these live service games. And it's really upsetting to see these people's hard work being thrown away like garbage after it's only been out for 11 months. And yeah, I'm not too upset about the game's demise, since it did take away time from me that I'll never get back. But what's more upsetting is how himself stated that Platinum Games is going to be journeying more into games like this going forward. And I don't know, man, with stuff like Bayonetta 3 and the Nier series under your belt, I'd steer far away from anything like Babylon's Fall from here on out. Maybe if they created a game similar to Suda51's Let It Die, it wouldn't have been such a disaster. Oh, by the way, Let It Die was a free-to-play online action game. And while it doesn't have a ton of attention these days, it's still a game that you can go back to and have some fun with. Hell, you can even play it on your Steam Deck if you have one. But Babylon's biggest fall was how greedy these companies were for thinking people wanted something like this. As a fan of Platinum Games, I'm hoping to see a lot less of this stuff from them in the future, because they have the potential to be the greatest action game developers out there. But only time will tell how that turns out. And with that being said, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Babylon's Fall in the comments. Whether you love it or hate it, it always sucks seeing a game get completely shut down, especially since it hasn't even been out a whole year yet. But oh well, what can you do? Subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you all in the next video.